The night sky above Earth was silent, but silence did not mean safety. For many years, humanity had looked at the stars with wonder. They dreamed of other worlds, of life beyond Earth, of neighbors in the endless dark. But when the first signals came, they carried no message of peace. They carried a warning. The signals were cold, repeating patterns filled with strange pulses that no scientist could explain. They did not sound like greetings. They sounded like marching drums. They sounded like preparation for war. At first, many ignored the warnings. Some said it was only natural space noise. Others claimed it was nothing more than a dying star crying into the void. But then the colonies on Mars went silent. Communication lines were cut. The cities that had been glowing with human life went dark. The first rescue ships never returned. Only broken metal drifted back, burned and twisted. The survivors whispered of shadows moving across the red horizon. Shadows that did not belong to man. Fear began to spread. The governments of Earth gathered in secret meetings. They argued. They blamed one another. But soon the truth could not be hidden. Humanity was no longer alone, and whoever had arrived did not come in peace. The first attack on Earth came without warning. A fleet appeared above the atmosphere, dark shapes against the stars. They did not send words. They did not ask for surrender. They simply opened fire. The skies above New York, Shanghai, and Moscow burned with falling fire. Buildings crumbled. Oceans boiled where their weapons struck. Millions were lost in the first hours. Humanity, for the first time in its history, faced an enemy not born of its own world. People looked up at the sky and saw death falling. They heard the screams of the dying, the roar of collapsing cities, and they knew the war had begun. The invaders were not like anything the human eye had seen. They were taller, stronger. Their armor fused with strange technology that shimmered like liquid metal. They moved as if the air itself obeyed them. And when they spoke, their voices shook the ground. They declared one thing: humanity had no right to exist. Earth was to be wiped clean. Their empire had decided that mankind was a mistake, and mistakes must be erased. The message echoed across all frequencies. It was repeated on every channel in every city still standing. This world belongs to us. Your time is over. Humanity will be dust. The words were heavy, filled with cold certainty. This was not a simple conquest. It was extermination. In the streets, panic grew. Families fled to the countryside. Soldiers tried to hold the lines. Scientists searched for answers in the wreckage of fallen ships. For the first time in centuries, the nations of Earth began to unite, not out of choice but out of fear. Yet, in that fear, something else began to burn. A small spark, a thought whispered among survivors. If they want to erase us, then we must not only survive, we must fight back. On the edge of the Atlantic, a mother held her child close as alien ships thundered above. Her voice was quiet, but her words carried the spirit of all mankind. They think we will break. They think we will fall. But humans do not fall so easily. And in the mountains, deep underground, hidden bases came alive. Engineers built weapons from scraps. Soldiers trained in the dark. Leaders spoke not of surrender, but of defiance. The war had begun, and though humanity stood on the edge of destruction, there was something the aliens did not understand. They thought Earth was weak, divided, fragile. They thought the war would be swift. But humanity's true strength had not yet been revealed. The sky burned red. The oceans carried the ruins of cities. The world trembled under the weight of a power far beyond its own. But in that darkness, in that storm of fire and fear, humanity whispered a promise. We will not vanish. We will not bow. We will not die silent. And so, as the alien empire marched forward, certain of victory, they did not see the danger rising against them. They did not see the one thing that would undo them. They did not see humanity's rage. The first part of the war was not about victory. It was about survival. Every family who hid in the ruins. Every soldier who stood against impossible odds. Every engineer who turned broken machines into weapons. They were the beginning of a fire that could not be put out. The enemy thought humanity was weak. But weakness is not always weakness. Sometimes weakness becomes strength. Sometimes fear becomes courage. And sometimes the smallest voice becomes the loudest roar. As the first week of war ended, the enemy sent their message again. This world is ours. You are finished. But in the ruins of Earth, a new message was born. Not in their language, not through words, but through defiance, through survival, through the simple act of refusing to die. It was the beginning of a promise that would echo across the stars. They waged war on humanity, but the story of humanity was only just beginning. Humanity strikes back. The first attacks on Earth left cities in ruins and the world in mourning. Smoke covered the skies for weeks. Fires burned where oceans had boiled. The enemy expected silence after their strikes. They expected fear to crush the human spirit. But what they saw instead was something they had never imagined. Humanity did not kneel. Humanity did not beg. Humanity rose. Across the globe, survivors came out of the ashes. Farmers who once held tools now carried weapons. Teachers who once read books now taught others how to resist. Scientists who once studied stars now studied alien wreckage, searching for secrets within broken machines. The invaders thought Earth was finished, but Earth was only beginning. In a hidden mountain base, leaders from nations that once hated one another now sat side by side. Old enemies shook hands not for friendship but for survival. They shared technology, weapons, and intelligence. Walls that had divided humanity for centuries crumbled in a single night of fire. The world became one army. Soldiers on every continent began to fight in new ways. They could not match the alien empire's ships in size or power, but humans were clever. They set traps in ruined cities, drawing the enemy into tight streets where their massive machines could not move. They turned skyscrapers into weapons, collapsing towers onto alien walkers. Every destroyed alien machine became a new lesson. Engineers pulled apart the strange armor, studying its weaknesses. They found that the invaders' liquid metal technology could bend and flow, but it shattered when struck with enough force in the right place. Within days, new weapons were made. Old rifles were rebuilt with stolen alien energy cores. Drones were armed with explosives taken from fallen ships. Humanity was learning faster than the enemy expected, and in every battle, though many humans fell, stories of resistance spread like fire. A single squad destroying a giant machine, a small group of farmers using traps to wipe out an entire patrol, children carrying messages through underground tunnels while the invaders searched above. The aliens had come with pride. They saw humans as insects, but every day that passed, that pride began to crack. In orbit above Earth, alien commanders watched the planet burn. Yet they also saw something strange. No matter how many cities they destroyed, humanity fought harder. No matter how many families they erased, more voices rose in anger. The invaders began to understand something they had never faced before. Humans did not know when to stop fighting. The first great human victory came in the ruins of Paris. The alien fleet landed, certain that the city was already theirs, but underground thousands of men and women waited. They had no warships. They had no great machines. They had only courage, and they had traps built from broken parts. As the invaders marched through the streets, explosions tore through their ranks. Entire buildings collapsed onto their machines. Human fighters swarmed out of tunnels, striking from the shadows. For the first time, the aliens retreated. For the first time, the Empire's soldiers ran. News of the victory spread across the planet. It was more than a battle. It was a message. The Empire could bleed. From the deserts of Africa to the frozen north, resistance grew. Radio signals carried hope across shattered continents. Fight, do not surrender. Humanity still stands. Even the enemy began to notice. Reports carried back to their empire spoke of something unusual. Their weapons were superior. Their numbers were greater. But humanity adapted too quickly. Every defeat became a lesson. Every lesson became a weapon. The alien commanders made a mistake. They thought humanity's survival was chance. They thought the resistance would die out soon. They did not see what was truly happening. Something greater was being born. In secret, deep beneath the ruined cities, humanity began to build something new. Ships forged from alien wreckage, weapons made from stolen energy, a fleet that did not exist before the war. And in those dark places, leaders spoke words that burned with power. We will not only survive, we will strike back. We will carry this war into the stars. We will not stop until their empire is gone. The invaders who had once declared humanity's extinction now faced a truth they could not deny. Humanity was no longer prey. Humanity was becoming the hunter. On a broken field outside the ruins of London, A young soldier stood against a towering alien machine. His weapon was nothing compared to theirs, but his courage was greater. He fired not once, but again and again until the giant fell. His voice carried across the battlefield as he shouted into the smoke, "This is our world, and we will never give it to you." Those words were remembered. They spread through every surviving city. They became a new anthem, a promise that every human carried in their hearts. The aliens had come to erase humanity's story, but in their arrogance they had written a new one, a story of unity, of rage, of defiance, a story of a species that refused to be broken. By the end of the first month, the war was no longer one-sided. The Empire had fire and power. Humanity had something far more dangerous. Humanity had hope, and hope once born cannot be killed. The enemy did not yet understand, but soon they would. They had awakened something they could never control. They had awakened humanity's wrath. The turning point. The alien empire was growing restless. They had come to Earth certain of victory, certain that humanity would vanish like dust in the wind. But weeks of battle had brought them something they did not expect. Resistance. They had destroyed cities. They had burned oceans. They had crushed armies. Yet humanity did not vanish. Every day, more humans rose to fight. Every night, survivors whispered promises of revenge. What should have been a swift conquest had become a slow war, and the Empire hated slow wars. So they changed their strategy. If Earth would not kneel, then Earth would be broken. Entire regions were marked for destruction. Alien fleets spread across the skies, firing their weapons into forests, deserts, and seas. They were not just hunting soldiers. They were erasing the land itself. The Amazon burned. The Sahara cracked open with fire. The Himalayas shook as mountains fell. Cities drowned under walls of water when alien machines tore through dams and rivers. Earth cried out in pain, and humanity trembled at the sight of it. The invaders wanted to break the spirit of mankind. They wanted to show that resistance was useless. But something else happened instead. For every piece of land destroyed, for every city lost, humanity's fury grew. The more the aliens struck, the more the survivors rose. There was no longer north or south, no longer east or west. There was only Earth. And Earth had decided to fight as one. In a hidden base beneath the ruins of Berlin, scientists studied alien wreckage with desperate speed. They discovered something shocking. The Empire's technology was powerful, but it was not perfect. It was fragile in places. It depended on strange energy crystals that could crack under extreme pressure. What was once a secret became humanity's weapon. Within weeks, soldiers carried explosives designed to shatter those crystals. Drones flew suicide missions into alien machines, detonating themselves to cripple towering giants. Even old satellites were turned into falling bombs, crashing from orbit into alien ships. The Empire noticed. Their commanders began to fear. The great battle of the war came above the ruins of Tokyo. The Empire sent a fleet so large that the sky turned black. They believed this would end it all. They believed Earth would fall in a single night. But humanity was waiting. From underground tunnels, hidden anti-air weapons rose and fired. From the sea, submarines armed with stolen alien tech launched torpedoes into massive warships. And from the sky itself, human pilots flew machines that should not have been able to fly, ships built from the skeletons of fallen alien craft. The battle turned the night into fire. Skies shook with explosions. Oceans boiled again. The earth trembled as machines clashed. For hours, the Empire pressed forward. Their ships cut through the air like knives. Their weapons tore holes in the ground. But humanity did not fall, and then it happened. A single human squad carrying stolen alien weapons managed to reach the Empire's command ship. No one expected them to survive. No one expected them to succeed. But when the ship's core exploded, the fleet above Tokyo cracked open like glass. The Empire had never lost a command ship before. They had never believed such a thing was possible. But humanity had done it. The battle was not a simple victory. Millions died, cities were lost forever. The earth itself was scarred. But in that night of blood and fire, something new was born. Humanity had not only survived. Humanity had struck a blow that the Empire could not ignore. The aliens retreated from Tokyo, leaving their dead behind. For the first time, they abandoned a battlefield. For the first time, they tasted fear. The story spread across the stars. Messages raced through the Empire, carrying a truth too dangerous to ignore. Humanity had the power to destroy them, but humanity did not celebrate. Not yet. They had won a battle, not the war. And the Empire would return. Everyone knew it. In the ruins, survivors stood in silence. Fires burned around them. Ash fell like snow. The city was gone, but the spirit of Earth had grown stronger. Soldiers swore they would fight until their last breath. Families who had lost everything still whispered hope to one another. It was clear now. This was no longer a war of survival. This was a war of destiny. The invaders had come to erase humanity's story. Instead, they had written the first chapter of something far greater. Humanity was no longer a victim. Humanity was no longer prey. They had become the storm that would bring the Empire down. And in the silence after the battle, as the smoke cleared and the dead were counted, a single thought rose in the hearts of mankind. If we can defeat them here, then we can defeat them anywhere. If their empire can bleed, then their empire can fall. The turning point had arrived. The Empire had unleashed its full fury, but instead of ending humanity, it had awakened something far more dangerous. It had awakened hope. And hope, once awakened, cannot be killed. The fall of the enemy empire. The Empire believed Earth was only a battlefield, but Earth had become a forge. In the fires of invasion, humanity had been reshaped. What once was divided had become united. What once was weak had become strong. After the Battle of Tokyo, humanity no longer thought only of survival. They thought of victory. From hidden bases deep underground, new ships rose into the sky. They were not like the enemy's sleek war machines. They were rough, uneven, patched together with scraps of alien wreckage and human steel. But they flew. And when they flew, they carried something stronger than any weapon: the will of humanity. For the first time in history, Earth launched a fleet not to explore, but to conquer. The alien empire had stretched across countless worlds for thousands of years. They had grown arrogant, certain that no enemy could ever touch them. But humanity did not strike where they were strong. Humanity struck where they were weak. Small human fleets attacked supply lines between worlds. They captured fuel stations, ambushed transport ships, and shattered communication beacons. In every place the Empire thought itself untouchable, humans appeared like ghosts, burning their way through the stars. The Empire tried to respond with overwhelming force, but their armies were too slow. They were built for conquest, not defense. They were built to crush, not to endure. Humanity had learned their weakness. The Empire did not know how to fight an enemy that refused to surrender. The first great victory beyond Earth came on the mining world of Kareth. The Empire had used the planet to strip entire mountains of crystal energy, the same crystals that powered their ships. Humanity struck in the night, landing with stolen vessels disguised as trade ships. When the invaders realized what was happening, it was too late. Explosions ripped through their factories. Mines collapsed, burying alien machines. And when the dust cleared, the Empire's largest energy supply was gone. Across the galaxy, shock spread. An enemy had not only survived Earth, they had reached into the Empire's heart and torn it apart. But humanity was not finished. Each battle carried new lessons. Each stolen weapon became a new tool. With every world they struck, the humans grew stronger, faster, deadlier. The Empire began to retreat from some of its outer colonies. It had never retreated before. It had never feared before. Now fear was spreading like fire. In the Empire's Grand Council, voices rose in anger and disbelief. How could a single world defy their fleets? How could a species so young and fragile destroy cities that had stood for 1,000 years? But while they argued, humanity moved again. The next strike came against the Empire's military shipyards above the world of Vera. For centuries, the shipyards had built fleets that conquered hundreds of planets. They were the pride of the Empire. Humanity turned them into graveyards. Dozens of human ships patched together with stolen alien engines burst from the shadows of nearby moons. They struck the shipyards with everything they had: missiles, plasma cannons, explosives strapped to unmanned drones. The Empire fought back, but their fleets were caught in chaos. Docked warships exploded before they could launch. Factories crumbled into fire, and as the last human ship retreated, the entire station collapsed, burning as it fell into the planet below. The Empire screamed in rage, but their pride was already broken. For the first time, their people began to whisper words they had never spoken before. What if the humans cannot be stopped? In the ruins of Earth, survivors listened to the news carried back by fleets. They wept for the dead, but cheered for the victories. They rebuilt their homes even as they built more weapons. For them, the war was no longer just about survival. It was about justice. The Empire had come to erase humanity. Now it was humanity who erased the Empire. And then came the strike that ended everything. Humanity discovered the location of the Empire's capital world, a planet of shining towers and endless cities, where rulers had watched the stars for centuries in arrogance. No enemy had ever dared to approach it. No enemy had ever dreamed it could fall. But humanity was not like their other enemies. The fleet that left Earth was small compared to the Empire's armadas. Its ships were scarred and broken, their engines screaming with every jump through space. But each ship carried hearts that refused to die. Each ship carried rage that burned brighter than suns. When the humans arrived above the Empire's capital, the sky filled with fire. The Empire's fleets rushed to defend their home, but they were not ready for an enemy who fought with nothing to lose. Human ships crashed directly into alien vessels, tearing them apart. Explosives hidden in broken shells of captured ships detonated in the heart of the enemy's defenses. Human soldiers landed on the surface, fighting in the streets of the Empire's proudest city. For days, the battle raged. The ground shook. Towers that had stood for thousands of years fell into dust. The Empire screamed, but no help came. And then, in a single night of thunder and flame, humanity reached the Empire's palace. The palace had once been a symbol of eternal rule. Now it became a symbol of eternal ruin. Explosions tore through its walls. Fires consumed its halls. And when the smoke cleared, the Empire's rulers were gone. Humanity had done what no other species had ever done. They had destroyed the heart of an empire that once ruled the stars. The fall of the capital was more than a victory. It was the end of an age. Across the galaxy, the Empire's fleets crumbled. Its soldiers surrendered. Its people fled into shadows. What was once eternal was now only memory. And in the silence that followed, one truth stood clear. They had waged war on humanity. But in the end, it was their empire that vanished. The legacy of humanity, the empire, was gone. Its fleets lay in ruins across the stars. Its cities, once proud and shining, now burned as hollow shells. Its rulers, who once believed themselves eternal, had fallen into dust. Humanity had won. Yet victory did not feel like celebration. Earth was scarred. Oceans were poisoned. Forests burned where no trees would grow again. Millions had died, not in silence, but in fire and fury. The war had ended, but its echoes would never fade. In the ruins of New York, survivors walked through streets where towers had once touched the sky. They placed stones for the dead, but their voices were steady. They whispered not of despair, but of endurance. They whispered of what humanity had become. The world was not the same. The people were not the same. The war had carved something new into the heart of mankind. For the first time, humanity had looked into the abyss of extinction and had not fallen. For the first time, they had not only resisted, but had destroyed an empire that had ruled for thousands of years. In the silence of the rebuilt council chambers, leaders spoke quietly. They no longer argued about borders or wealth. They no longer thought of Earth as divided. They thought of it as one. Humanity was now a single voice, a single people, and that people had learned a terrible lesson. They had learned how to fight the stars. Ships that once limped into battle now returned as fleets. Factories that once built tools now built engines that could cross galaxies. Children grew up not dreaming of simple lives, but dreaming of skies filled with worlds waiting to be reached. But there was a shadow in that dream. The empire was gone. But the galaxy was not empty. Other civilizations watched from the dark, some in silence, some in fear. They had seen the war. They had seen how a small, fragile world had risen to burn an empire to ash. Whispers spread across distant stars. Some called humanity saviors. Others called them monsters. But all agreed on one truth. Humanity was not to be ignored. On Earth, survivors built memorials not of victory, but of warning. A single message was carved into stone in every city rebuilt. They came to erase us. We erased them instead. It was not written with pride. It was written with memory. Memory of fire. Memory of loss. Memory of what it cost to survive. And yet even in that silence of mourning there was something else. A quiet strength. A seed of destiny. Because humanity knew this war was not the end. It was the beginning. In secret, fleets were prepared to travel further. To explore. To discover, to defend. Humanity had seen how fragile survival could be, and they would not be caught unprepared again. Soldiers who once fought in the streets of ruined cities now stood on starships as captains. Children who once hid in basements from alien fire now studied the skies with determination in their eyes. The scars of war became the foundation of a new age, but the question remained, what would humanity become now? Would they remain the defenders of their world, always guarding, always watching the skies for the next enemy? Or would they become something more dangerous, something the galaxy would learn to fear? Conquerors, carrying war into the void before it could ever return to them. No one could answer. Not yet. The story of humanity was only beginning, but it was already written in blood. On the last night of mourning, as fires from the ruined empire faded from the horizon, the people of Earth gathered together. No weapons, no speeches, only silence. They looked to the sky filled with stars and understood what had changed. Those stars had once been a mystery. Now they were a warning, and also a promise. Humanity had faced the impossible. Humanity had survived. Humanity had destroyed an empire that had believed itself untouchable. But survival comes with a cost. The cost was innocence. The cost was peace. Humanity would never be the same again. The galaxy would never be the same again. And in the deep silence of space, where wreckage drifted and shadows stretched forever, one truth remained clear. They had waged war on humanity. Humanity had erased their empire forever. But this was not the end. This was only the first chapter.